Okay. So, do you think it's possible for a zombie apocalypse to happen?
No.
Why not?
Because.
Becky, you think it's possible?
Well, yeah, sure, but there's also a lot of stuff that points that it's not possible.
What about you, Commando? Think it's possible? Commando!
Yeah.
Damn it. Do you think it's possible for a zombie apocalypse?
No.
Why not?
At least not in a current state. I do not believe the body can function without the full functionality of the brain. Well, at least that part of the brain that they lose when you become
What
a
if
zombie.
I told you? What if I told you there's a bacteria out there that
Zombie-like. Not zombie. Zombie-like.
Okay. Well, in order for you to be, first of all, in order for you to be, from what like Walking Dead says, it's a virus, right?
Yeah.
In reality, it's not a virus. I'm just putting it into perspective of real life, what can actually happen, not theater type, and comparing it to ideas from what the movies say, right? So they say it's a virus, right? Reality, it can't be a virus. It must be a bacteria. Because the way the virus works, I'll go into this huge talk, and then you'll just confuse the shit out of you, but it just cannot be a virus. It has to be a bacteria, okay? So with that out of the way, it's still possible with the bacteria. Bacteria essentially somewhat works similar to a virus, right? In the sense of like replication kind of thing, right? So what if I told you there was this bacteria out there, and you can literally look this up, that actually infects a snail as part of its life cycle, makes its eyes bulge out like worms, and then pretty much takes over the brain of the zombie, I mean the brain of the snail, and makes it go to the top of grass, of tall grass. That way, birds can see it and assume its eyes are actually worms and then eat it. So it eats the snail. And then after eating it, now the bacteria has its life cycle inside the stomach of the bird to continue its life cycle. And essentially that snail has become a zombie to that bacteria, while not harming the snail itself until only up to a certain point of where the bird kills it. So what if I told you that? Do you think it's possible now? I don't know. That seems pretty big. That seems pretty... Technically, it is on a very improbable chance. And the only one is, and you guys, it's like gonna blow your minds. Okay, it has to be. So how could we spread bacteria, right? You ever have like a sore throat? That's like sometimes it's a bacterial infection, right? So if you cough, that way you can spread it, right? But you got to look at, well, how does a bacteria survive? It obviously needed to survive in our throat, right? It was living off of us. That's why we got sick, and our body immune system's like, get that shit out of here. But the bacteria needs to survive, right? So when you cough, can it survive outside the human body? That's the next question you got to ask. So obviously, in order for this zombie type thing, it has to be very contagious, and it has to be very easy to get infected by it, right? So
Yeah.
can it live outside the human body? That's the next question. It has to live outside the human body, and there have been types of bacteria out there that goes into something called like an endospore. It's like scientists don't really understand the mechanism of why it does it, or how it survives in the sense like this, but they know the process of how it does it exactly. So take this for example. Like bacteria senses the environment is uninhabitable, right? So it goes into this endospore where it literally essentially kills itself, but leaves only its DNA in this very highly protective coat, so nothing gets through to it. The only way of getting through to it is burning it. Like you could use like these antiseptics, whatever you want, like bactericidal stuff, and you will not be able to get to it. Okay, you will not be able to kill it. Only very, very high stringent techniques can you get to it. Okay, so essentially this zombie type bacteria that's supposed to infect humans and make them into zombies has to be able to do what's called an endospore, but yet be infectious outside the human body. Okay, so that is possible, right?
Alright.
Okay. Now the other thing is, it has to be able to live in really cold and really hot environments. Cold environments is fine, right? It slows down its process of spreading. Huh?
Why?
Why cold? Well, the way its proteins work and I don't want you to think like protein shakes. A cell has proteins.
Chemical makeup.
Proteins are essentially the working machinery. Think of like the cell as a factory, right? And the workers are your proteins, and they're the ones doing. I suck as shit with that fucking guy, but they're the ones doing the work in the factory, right? So the proteins are like doing the work in the factory, and proteins have an optimal working range, so they can work best under an optimal like temperature. Like say the human body, right? It works best under the human body temperature, but it works worse under cold temperatures where it slows down its process, and it works extremely. It can denature and not work at all under high temperatures. So the protein has to be in the bacteria, has to be able to handle that. That's why I say so in short, the bacteria has to be able to survive under extreme cold and extreme heats. Okay. So in general, it doesn't really have to worry about extreme heats, because think about it. If you cough and you have it outside, it's not really going to face extreme heats. It's just going to face like dry environment, right? So it just has to really worry about like extreme cold, which is like winter. But that's not even a big case, because it can probably survive through the cold too, right? It just works slower. So now we got to the point of it can live outside the human body, it can infect, but the other thing is, can it get past the blood-brain barrier, right? So it has to be like meningitis. That's the only thing that can get past the blood-brain barrier, right? So if it, essentially we're saying meningitis becomes suddenly infectious and does all these things I just said and gets past the blood-brain barrier, but the only way meningitis gets past the it does that is under a very severely compromised immune system and all this other stuff. That's the only way it can really do it. Okay? So
hey, Doom.
Yeah.
I got a question. Alright, so
What?
I had meningitis, alright? And I was incredibly fit before I
Oh my
got
god,
it.
I'm lagging. Oh my god, I'm lagging. You're incredibly fit, yeah?
And I was extremely healthy. And like it can, you know, as you just said, can you only get it if, say,
there's
you
other
have
ways
a-
of getting it. Like, I totally don't really know the exact mechanism of meningitis, but I know it can infect the brain. I might be wrong on meningitis too, but I know that's the one. Okay. So it affects your cerebral spinal fluid too, like your spinal cord and whatnot, right? Like, so we're saying like something like that gets very infectious, but we're talking like very easy to get, very infectious, and your cerebral spinal fluid, right? It's like cut off from like the outside, especially the brain. It's got this blood-brain barrier, okay? And only nutrients can get through that to the body, right? So if you have that blood-brain barrier, the bacteria has to, first of all, the way the bacteria has to work is the way movies say it, and the way Walking Dead says it is they're all dead and they can survive, right? But that's not, and you have to shoot them in the head. Get that out of your mind. The body has to stay alive. It can't be dead and live. Like if you make a zombie bleed to death, it's dead essentially.
Yeah.
It's dead. It cannot live. So if it has to be alive. That's the other thing. So you can kill a zombie any way you like. It doesn't matter if you shoot it in the brain or you shoot it in the toes and make it bleed out. It's totally the same thing, and you'll kill it. So the reason I say this is because the bacteria that infects the brain needs nutrients, right? So it might an optimal bacteria is one that does not kill its host. It lives off its host, and the host being us, the humans, right? So it's living inside our brain, and essentially it's saying to the us, which it takes over the brain and says to the brain, I need human meat, I need human flesh, but I'm not going to eat your flesh because you're what's keeping me alive. I'm going to eat other flesh, right? So it's telling that to the brain, and the brain's like, oh, I'm going to eat flesh, human flesh, got to eat more flesh, right? So it'll go around and it'll eat flesh, and then the whole digestive tract, yada yada, will use the blood to get the nutrients to the brain, where the bacteria will eat off of that and survive, right? And then it'll grow and home to the brain and keep it like that, right? So it is, in that regard, very possible. It has to be very highly contagious, highly infectious, and be able to live outside the body, no problem, and be able to infect us easily, yet, and also evade the immune system. Let's not forget our immune system, how powerful that is, to kill it right away and prevent it. It has to be able to evade that, make its way to our brain, and be able to do what I just said to the brain, which is very unlikely for a bacteria to be that smart to do it. Okay? It might as well just be like a worm to be able to do that. A full, like, eukaryote, not a prokaryote. So, that is how a zombie apocalypse happens. It's actually a living human. And how you or me could be infected right now, we don't even know, and you're probably taking...
So in other words, for zombie apocalypse happening, we have to change the way we think about how zombies work.
Exactly.
Slightly.
You have to think of it as, it is actually possible, you have to think of it as they're alive, live human beings, but their
brains control
their brain is, because look at it. Like, so, have you seen those cases where people are in the hospital and they're like, holy shit, it's an enemy!
Yep,
Right.
all the time.
Yeah.
There's people in the hospital.
A lot? Never been in a psych hospital.
Oh my god. I'm doing so terrible talking and playing. But think about it, like, have you ever seen those cases where people are in the hospital and they're like, they get in this really bad accident. The doctor says they're brain dead, but they keep their body alive on, like, all these machines that keep their heart pumping, their body pumping, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it keeps their organs alive. This is why I say if you like shoot out the damn zombie's like liver or his heart or something, he's basically dead, right? In those cases they're considered brain dead, but their body's kept alive. So what the bacteria has to do is take over your brain, cause you to be brain dead, so now you're legitimately dead. But after it does this, it has to still be able to control the brain enough and give it enough nutrients to cause it to allow the proper electrical signals to go to the heart and cause it to pump. And this is parts of the brain where you're like, your subconscious takes care of it. You're totally unaware of this. This is where your brain is controlling for your heart to pump and all that other stuff. It gives it, and it can give it like hormones to make it pump even more and whatnot, right? So it has to like give it all that. It has to like say to the brain, you're gonna still function to this extent, but nobody's controlling you but me.
My body's telling me yes.
What?
R. Kelly.
R. Kelly?
That was beautiful.
Thanks, man.
Jesus, Washington, you're amazing.
I know.
So yeah. Any other questions?
Can
And
I
yeah,
turn into a zombie right now?
It can infect other animals. It can infect animals. It has to be able to adapt to different species. That's like another thing. Can it infect animals? If it was really amazing and unbelievably, like, this is something that's just way out of the ranges of not. I don't even think it's possible to have this happen. For everything I just stated, what I just stated. By the way, you came late to the conversation. What I just stated, it is fully possible for that to happen, but it's as unlikely in the sense of causing something to happen like that. It would have to go through so much. It would literally have to go like through an evolution type process, an unbelievably crazy evolution type process that is very unlikely. Okay? And after infecting and all that stuff, it has to be able, another part of its adapting way is it has to be able to adapt to animals. So we can't be the only host, right? It can't just stay out there saying, oh man, I gotta find myself another human. It has to be able to mutate spontaneously to be, well, technically from replicating so much, it has to be able to mutate, right? It'll mutate through doing that. So it has to be able to like replicate so much and cause mutations that will be able to affect other species like animals, a dog, a cat, or whatever. And then it can spread from that to humans. So it is possible to do it that way. That's the only way we can actually have a zombie apocalypse.
Can you spread it through sex?
Yes, Wilson. Sex is the #1 on the list.
Wait, so could the meningitis bacteria mutate and like with is that possible?
Yes. It needs to replicate. Anything that replicates a significant amount of times will cause enough mutations to be able to evade essentially anything and cause a new adaptive species.
Why do you think we have so many different strains of the flu?
Exactly. So if it is, in essence, the only reason I say very unlikely for meningitis is because Meningitis, in reality, cannot live outside the human body. Really. It needs the human body. So there's the back to square one. You need to be able to live outside the human body. Number two is, this is a crazy-ass freaking bacteria that we're talking about. The whole things that I just mentioned, yeah, it's possible. Don't start making conspiracy theory like the next 2012 conspiracy theory. And just be like, holy shit, the zombies are coming any moment now. We got a bacteria. You know what I mean? Like, don't make another one. I'm just telling you facts of how it could possibly happen. But it's very unlikely for it to even happen. Just extremely unlikely. It just doesn't happen. Like, it would be wiped before it could happen. But what we could have, something that's what is actually happening right now and scary as hell, is a lethal type of bacteria. Okay? How about this? Forget zombies. How about a lethal type of bacteria? Okay? Because of all like us using like antibacterial soaps and not finishing our antibiotic medication that we're given.
I just want to say this right now.
Hold on, I'm not done with it. I'm not done.
Sometimes I do not wash my hands after going to the bathroom.
Oh wow.
Well, okay. Now, as I was saying, so what could happen? What could happen is after not finishing your medication and using too much like antibiotic soap and whatnot, you can cause resistant strains. Like I said, when they replicate, they mutate. So they can mutate to a degree where now any antibiotic you're using or any way of clearing them, they can mutate to a point where that has no effect to them. And there is some very highly resistant strains out there. This is the other thing that the zombie apocalyptic bacteria needs to have, which is again very rare because it's like, holy shit, this is amazing. It needs to be able to evade anything we throw at it. The only thing that can essentially get to it is burning it. That's the optimal way of killing anything, is burning it. So think about that for a second. Let that roll over.
But then you have to like burn a whole bunch of stuff.
No, but what I'm saying is something more scary than zombie apocalypse is a pandemic. That's the one. Like, remember the swine flu or whatever, and it was just a simple virus, and it just went all over the goddamn place. It was a virus, right? It adapted to different species, right? Remember, it had like part of the pig, part of a bat, part of a thing, and I don't mean like it was like an animal. It had DNA of like a bat, a pig, and whatnot, because it used to have those as its hosts, and then it went on to attack humans. So that was like crazy. That's something that could happen right now, and we're like overdue for something like that. But and I'm talking like something lethal, like something that would kill you the moment it infected you. You know what I mean? And it was very contagious and easily spread. That is something scary. That's something worse than a
Could be
zombie
happening
apocalypse.
right now.
Hell yeah, it could be happening right now. That is really scary because think about it. If it gets a very resistant strain, now anything our doctors have can't stop it. It's very infectious. It can go all over the damn place. And hell, it could kill everybody like that. How do you stop that? You know how we stop it? You know how we stopped it in the past for other pandemics? Is we find people who have an immune system that's actually immune to it. And then we get their antibodies and we use that as like a vaccine. We make their antibodies and use a vaccine. Yeah. So think about that for a second there, Wilson. Oh yeah, and the other thing why a zombie apocalypse is not possible, in the research labs and whatnot, we would probably find a vaccine before it actually got too bad. Most likely, without doubt.
So that's go unnoticed.
It would not go unnoticed. It would not go unnoticed. We would find a vaccine. So yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. See y'all later. Peace.
Bye.
Well.